Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be looking at one of the songs that came out in the past few weeks from Kendrick Lamar, Auntie Diaries, and seeing some of the lessons that we can pick up from the song. So without further ado, let's get into it.
This is how we conceptualize human beings.
My
Yeah.
auntie is a man now. I think I'm old enough to understand now. Drinking Parmesan with her hat turned backwards. Motorola pager, off-white guest jacket. Blue Air Maxes, gold chains and curl kits. 93 Nissan wax job, the earliest. Big social, big personality, vocal. Played the underground verbatim and stayed local. My auntie is a man now. I watch him and his girl hold their hands down, tipping.
The first thing that I pick up from the song is Kendrick is talking about a relative of his who's a lady who transitioned into, call it being a man, but I don't think in the beginning, from a child's perspective, I remember when I was a child where I'd have aunts who would have short hair, always have women around them, and you try. It was hard to understand because it's like your aunt is a man, because in your head the perspective you have is, oh, this is what men do, this is how men dress, this is what men do. And then there's that one aunt who's always wearing leather pants, jeans, has a leather jacket, has a fade, and moves in a different way, has ladies around them. And when he says my aunt is a man now, like that really caught my attention. Kendrick is telling the story about his relatives transition, and in the story he is supposed to be a kid from as early as second grade. Though he claims to understand, he likely doesn't, given he is supposed to be a child. He reduces his relative transition to one short statement Kendrick hasn't completely understood. What this means for his aunt, evidently, since I think I'm old enough to understand now, suggests that his understanding he stemmed from being older and not being a child, and he doesn't claim but rather believes he may have a grasp on things, hence the word think. All right, so let's keep it playing. See if we agree with this.
Avenues under street lights made his, thinking I want me a bad when I get big. They hug on the corner like California came cold, hand all up a skirt, cars whistling down the road. See, my auntie is a man now, slight bravado, scratching the likes from Lotto, hoping that she pull up tomorrow so I can hang out in the front seat. 6x9s keeping the music up under me. My auntie is a man now. Ask my mama why my uncles don't like him that much, and at the parties why they always want to fight him that much. She said ain't no telling. I've always been jealous because he had more women, more money and more attention made more envy. Calling him anything but broke was less offending.
You see, that's the thing that happens. Is, as a child, you don't really understand what's happening with grown-ups, because as a child, you're open to a lot of things. Whereas grown-ups, because like, no, you're not. They'll be looking at this lady going, you're not a man, fam. And the dynamics of those relationships is where the hatred comes from, is because one, in the community, is like you're embarrassing us, and two, they don't want you to be that. The reason they were picking up fights with her is because it's like you're taking away the women, you're doing whatever, and the level of jealousness that just comes from people. And for his mom to say there's always been jealous because he has more women, and what tends to happen is because she grew up, or he grew up as a woman, is have a deeper understanding of what it's like to be around women, and women find that attractive, and because most people, they blame whatever's going on with themselves on other people, so they'll take out these frustrations on his aunt, who's a man now. Okay, let's go into verse 2.
He's a man now. I think I'm old enough to understand now. Drinking Parmesan with her hat turned backwards. Back when it was comedic relief to say we ain't know no better. Elementary kids with no filter. However, my auntie became a man and I took pride in it. She wasn't gay, she ate, and that was the difference. That's what I told my friends in second grade. She picking me up from school, they stare at her in the face. They couldn't comprehend what I grew accustomed. We pull off bumping quick like it was nothing. My auntie is a man now. What a relationship. I grew up fast. I needed no one to babysit. He gave me some cash, then gave me some game. Sherry freshener on the dash. I never complained. She even cut my hair at the pad. Was loving my fade. The first person I seen write a rap. That's when my life had changed. House full of demos, smoke stuck on the window. Cameras on the microphone, all women and men know. My auntie was a man now. We cool with it. The history had trickled down and made us ignorant. My favorite cousin said he's returning the favor and following my auntie with the same behavior. Demetrius is Marianne.
Oh man, the way Kendrick plays with wordplay. In the second verse, man, he says a lot of things. When he says his relationship with his aunt, because it's someone that he knows and is grown accustomed to, is different from the outside world. So for him, you know, when you grow up with someone and you have an understanding of that human being, it's the relationship you develop, the conversations that you have, is you stop looking at them as a man or woman, just as the person in your life and the relationship that you have with them. But when you take that same person and you introduce them to your world, so let's say they come to your house, in this case to the school, it's, yo, Kendrick, why your aunt dressed like that? You know, kids, they're very unapologetic of how they address people, right? It's like, man, that's weird, you know. And I'm guessing the concept, especially when Kendrick was a child, the concept of trans, I guess it was there, but not much data and information was outside. So that's how those kids would make those reactions for him, you know. My aunt became a man and I took pride in it. She wasn't gay, she ate, and that was the difference, you know. That's what I told my friends in second grade. They couldn't comprehend what I grew accustomed to. Yeah, my aunt was a man now. I grew up fast. I needed no one to babysit because of the struggles that his aunt was going through. She would educate him in terms of, oh, this is what's actually going on, you know, and he had to grow up. And for most kids, they don't have to grow up because their parents, you know, for some reason, parents believe in keeping kids ignorant to issues that are going on in the world, feeling like you're protecting them. But what you're actually doing is you're taking away the power of knowledge from them. And then they become these dumb people who grow up with ignorant views on situations, whereas you could have educated them in terms of what's going on. And then let's move on into verse 3.
He's more confident to live his plan now. But the family in disbelief this time, convincing themselves he ain't living discreet, he's fine. They said they never seen it in him, but I seen it. The Barbie dolls played off reflection of Venus. He built the wall so tall you couldn't climb over. He didn't laugh as hard when the kids start joking. We ain't know no better. Middle school kids with no filter, however, I had to be very mindful of my good cousin. I knew exactly who he was, but I still loved him. Demetrius is Marianne now. I mean, he's really Marianne. Even took things further, changed his gender before Bruce Jenner was certain. Living his truth, even if it meant see a surgeon. We didn't talk for a while, he seemed more distant, wasn't comfortable around me, everything was offensive. But I recall, we both had a sixth sense of humor made raw, but time changes all. Demetrius.
Yeah, man, this one is another one where it's very tough because now it's, instead of his aunt being a man, now it's his cousin becoming a lady. And having a deep understanding of that, it changes, you know, our acceptance in our communities of people who are different from us. You know, it's very hard for them, you know, certain individuals when they want to make those transitions because you don't really know how your family will accept you. You know, in this case, if you listen to verse 3 in the beginning, he's more confident to live his plan now, but the family is in disbelief. But the family in disbelief this time because remember, his aunt is a man, convincing themselves he ain't living discreet, he's fine. And it's crazy, like people don't want to believe it, like, no, this is not happening. It's not happening. It's literally not happening. It's not happening in our house. And so on Genius, they go on to say the use of homophobic slurs in childhood and adolescence is disappointingly expected, with Kendrick's experience reflective of a decade-long trend that persists despite Western civilization's significant progress towards equity the course of the last half-century. The prevalence of it in this demographic is primarily due to the ignorance of youth, which we spoke about, which highlights the need for further representation and discussion on prejudice and bias in society. Kendrick's perception matured, however, through his relationships with his transgender uncle and cousin. This might also serve as an allegory for hip hop culture where homophobia is widespread. Kendrick's approach to this song became a hot button issue when it dropped, with some taking issue with the way they considered microaggressions. If you think dead naming, misgendering, and wielding slurs is the pinnacle of LGBTQ allyship, you've got a lot of work to do, boo. Transgender rights activist Raquel Willis tweeted, I just be tired of see why men thinking they can make their own rules around how to engage queer and trans folks. No, baby, you claim to want to be better. Well, engage us how we tell you. Why must you always push boundary with us and expect us to be grateful? Transgender musician. See, I feel the challenge with the trans community and with the LGBTQ community and with any community that's outside of the community that you're trying to engage. In this case, let's say black straight men. There's a language that people use. There's a culture that people live in, and you cannot ignore that culture because it doesn't meet your perspective and your views. So if Kendrick was to tell this story in a politically correct way, nobody could relate to it because nobody has an understanding of that. So when you look at the F word that he was saying a lot of times, it's a lot of people grew up with that word. A lot of people grew up saying that word. So simply pretending that that word does not exist in conversation or for by someone is telling you how they experienced it and what happened and how that created the danger. So the topic, the audience that Kendrick is talking to is not the LGBTQ community at all. He's talking to the community that he comes from that can relate to what he's saying, to the masses who listen consciously and they're like, oh, yeah, I remember when I was in second grade. This is how we used to speak. All right. And then another guy goes to say, I see a lot of people completely missing the point of Kendrick's song, Auntie Diaries. He's saying as a kid, he didn't know any better and how he grew past his homophobia and transphobia being a kid from Compton. Like it or not, the use of the F-slur, dead naming, and misgendering is a reality. I'm sorry he didn't sugarcoat it for y'all, but it's realistic as personally I still get dead named and misgendered by family to this day. Kendrick says the F-slur is only okay if we let white girls say the N-word. Therefore, it's not. He speaks on how a fan stood up to him and his contradictions and led him to growing. He also says how the church treated his trans relative. Well, I feel like this is now just going straight into the song. So let's go into verse 4 first.
And now, remember church Easter Sunday. I sat in the pew, you had stronger faith, more spiritual and enthused with living life straight. Which I found ironic because the pastor didn't see him the same. He said my cousin was going through some things. He promised to.
And this is the sad thing, especially in, I'd like to say African American community, but even in the African community, whereby pastors tend to have a lot of power over their congregations and the people that they look over. So when you look at, I remember growing up, they would look at gay folks and say, oh, that's a demon. We need to pray for him. He like, yo, fam. What? And families would believe you. And they'll look at it as you're cursed, and it's sad how much these preachers have a lot of power over people and they mislead people based on their own ignorance or fear of whatever, rather than seeing humans as humans. It's like, oh no, if I don't believe in this, die, how can you say, he said my cousin was going through some things? Many denominations of Christianity have a long history of issues with the LGBTQ community, from standing against same-sex marriage to dismissing the legitimacy of gender transitions. Church leaders will often chalk the experiences of LGBT people to test a struggle that God has bestowed them rather than accepting them for who they are. Many find it's just a phase sentiment damaging to the LGBT community as it stands in the way of true acceptance and progress. Yeah, this is an interesting storyline.
And then was an act on abomination, and Demetrius was to blame. I knew you was conflicted by the feelings of preacher man, wondering if God still call you a decent man. Still you found the courage to be subservient just to annoy him, until he singled you out to prove his point, saying, Demetrius is Mary Ann now. Church, his auntie is a man now. It hurt you the most cause your belief was close to his words, forcing me to stand now. I said, Mr. Preacher Man, should we love thy neighbor? The laws of the land of the heart was greater. I recognize the studies you was taught since birth, but that don't justify the feelings that my cousin preserved. The builder was thinking out loud, bad angel. That's when you looked at me and smiled, said thank you. The day I chose humanity over religion, the family got closer, it was all forgiven. I said them F-bombs, I ain't know any better. Mistakenly, I ain't think that you knew any different. See, I was taught words was nothing more than a sound, if ever they was pronounced without any intentions. The very second you challenged the was kicking, reminded me about a show I did out the city. That time I brought a fan on stage to rap, but disapproved a word that she couldn't say with me. You said, Kendrick, ain't no room for contradiction. To truly understand love, switch position. We can say it together, but only if you let a white girl say.
Yeah. This the verse 4, the way it all ends is fascinating. So Kendrick decided to call out the preacher because he disagreed with what he was saying about his cousin. He knew that it was not right for M.A.A.d to face the constant criticism and knew that he had to stand up for her. M.A.A.d was taught Christian teaching since birth, yet they somehow applied to everyone except her. Throughout the entire song, Kendrick had been referring to M.A.A.d as he, and is now just calling her by her preferred pronouns. This shows that he finally accepts her for her decision and for who she is now. Kendrick battles with his faith often. For example, states in Mother I Sober, where's my faith? Told you I was Christian, but just not today. Kendrick decided to prioritize his relationship with his family and his morals over what this preacher had to say on the issue. He prioritized the laws of the heart over the laws of the land. This is similar to lines from April's Element. I done cried. Yeah. See, the thing that he goes on to say in verse 4 is that contradiction that the preacher man brings. And a lot of times churches are like, why are we not getting people anymore? It's people are educated and people have an understanding, Church used to have a big impact on people's lives, but with data and information and relocation, it's like, fam, we understand a little bit different. Like, you can't tell me one day, love thy neighbor, and then the next day you're telling me, no, that person is a sinner because an LGBTQ community member. Do not associate with them. This. Like, nah, that's my brother, fam. Like, what you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? So it's fascinating how he ends the song and how the F word, how people used to use it so much. It's sad. And I remember what he talks about at the last line where he's like, you can say the F word, we can say it together, but only if you let a white girl say, the N word. During his 2018 Hangout Musical Festival performance, Kendrick brought two fans, Ryan and Delaney, on stage separately to rap his 2012 song m.A.A.d City with him. They were of Asian and Caucasian descent, respectively. When it was Delaney's turn, she rapped Kendrick's lyrics near verbatim using the N word multiple times. This prompted Kendrick to cut her off, stating, my boy Ron kind of knew the rules. This prompted cut her off, saying, my boy Ron kind of knew the rules a little bit. You gotta bleep one single word. She apologized, adding, I'm used to singing it like you wrote it. When asked about the incident during 2018, Vanity Fair came, let me put it to you in its simplest form. I've been on this earth for 30 years and there's been so many things a Caucasian person said I couldn't do. Get good credit, buy a house in the urban city. So many things you can't do that, whether it's from afar or close up. So if I say this is my word, let me have this one word, please. Let me have that word. It's nearly universally understood that the use of the N-word by non-black people is racist, though there are people that continue to use it out of malice, ignorance, and or entitlement. However, there are members of the black community that feel differently about the term. For example, Kendrick's longtime friend Scuba Q encouraged concert goers to utilize it at his shows, and his friend Tyler Creer stated that caring about the term keeps racism alive. Meanwhile, black icon Oprah has repeatedly shared that her belief that the term should stop being used altogether. Kendrick responded to a position on Peep to Butterfly version of his. Somebody did get this one verse to Oprah on how. All right, the hot button topic of non-black people using the term led to the incident going viral and being reported all over the globe. Here, Kendrick is challenged by his cousin with the hypocrisy of saying the F slur as a heterosexual cisgender male. If Kendrick is morally consistent and genuine ally to his transgender cousin, he should be just as cautious about non-LGBT using the F slur as he is about white people using the N-word. Many in the LGBTQ share this belief. As a writer, Kendrick is challenging the audience's own biases with this exchange. If he truly holds the belief that words are nothing more than sounds without intent, then he either needs to embrace non-black people using the N-word or must reject all slurs equally. If one means something, then so does the other. There's no room for contradiction, as M.A.A.d says. The interaction is also intended as a teaching moment for the listener, with Kendrick's narrative scaffolding how we could engage in healthy and more productive dialogues by looking to educate rather than shame or respond emotively. This feeling of hypocrisy in the song is familiar to the twist at the end of The Blacker the Berry. Interestingly, this exchange also marks the last time the N-word is used on the album. It's fascinating how Kendrick writes because, when you look at the N word, when I moved to North America, it wasn't a word that bothered me until someone who was non-black said it to me, and then you feel like, oh, there's an undertone of racism in what they're saying. It's not just fun anymore. You know, there's a lot of disrespect. There's a lot of evil malice and ignorance within the way people say that word. And for the LGBTQ community, I understand that, you know, using the F word, how it would hurt. But also, you start to realize how from ignorance, you don't really perceive it to be hurtful, to be a hurtful word to use. It's just a word, you know. It's like you look at it and you're like, oh, yeah, this is who you are. This is whatever. This is what you've been called. And I can be ignorant about it. But when we then complain about the N word, Marianne has a point. You cannot say the N word is bad and then use F words. And I feel like what tends to happen is, as long as you're trying to hurt people based on stereotypes, it shouldn't be right. You know, there should be laws that do not allow discrimination and the pain that we bring to people towards that. Racism is stupid. Being I don't know what it's called. Transphobic is stupid. Being homophobic is stupid. Being any type of phobic towards any human being is dumb and stupid and should not have any space in this world. I get it. We should all love each other, but it's difficult sometimes. But don't hate a person because of their choices. Hate a person because you hate a person, you know? And just be clear, like, John, I don't like you, you know? It's not that you're gay. It's just that I don't like you. Why does, you know, whatever someone does with their life affect you? What does that have to do with you? And I really like that Kendrick touches on this. And for white people who want to use the N-word, ask yourself, why are you so concerned with it? You know, it's not fair that you say it, so why would you want to do it? You know, and I hope that this doesn't happen again. In terms of it being in rap songs, that conversation is a conversation that has to happen and continue happening, because how, for artists, for black artists, it's a word that you grow up with to the extent that it's something that you say naturally. And hip hop is not just made for black people. So I don't know, man, because you can't be singing it in your house. It will slip out one time and you hurt people when you do it. Because you might say, oh, it was out of fun. But in as much as it's out of fun, you hurt people, you know. And the worst part is you're hurting people who do you no harm, who will be harmed if they react to your actions. So, yeah, that's something to think about. But this is actually a very great song by Kendrick with a lot of education in it. I feel like it's too early to even come up with the interpretation to the song, to the extent that even after 2 years, if you listen back to it, you come up with a different interpretation. But what he speaks about in the song is very valid with what's been going on in our societies and in the community. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Smash that subscribe button, leave us a like, and I'll see you in the next one.